Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. So, even though this is our usual Sunday morning meditation and talk, it also coincides with the final day of a retreat that began Thursday night. We've had approximately, I think, about 60 members. A third of them here in residence, and 2/3 online. Retreating from the world, so to speak, to focus singularly on one very important topic, and the topic of retreat is learning how to love. You know, there's a great literature of learning. You know, learning how to install a toilet, and learning how to, learning how to fix your car. All kinds of learnings that go on, all kinds of how-to, learning how to love. This whole literature of how-to. But there's something, again, and even in terms of our own transformation, learning to be more patient, learning how to be less angry, right? There's so many things, learning how to be more mindful in my life. There's so many things that we are learning. But there's something about learning how to love which kind of dominates them all. Especially, I think, in our culture. I mean, our culture, isn't that one of the prime purposes of one's life, right? To find somebody to love me. To find somebody to love, right? I'm sort of out of it these days, but isn't that kind of the essence of popular culture, popular music, right? Is music still all about? I mean, in my day, it was all about what? Finding your love, falling in love, being in love, falling out of love, being angry at the one you used to love, being disappointed, being hurt, looking again, finding love. I mean, is that still what a lot of the songs are about? I mean, nothing's changed. So that should be, that's indicative of something. So, it's not just, just to continue on that vein. Again, I haven't looked at popular celebrity magazines, but aren't they all about who's in love with who? Who's not in love with who? How's the relationship going between, the love relation? I mean, it's movies, TV, it's all love, love, love. As well as I said earlier, I think that's one of the primary, if people think, what is the primary thing that I want to do in life? Well, for most people, they want to what? They want to earn a living, have a career, right? And then they also want to what? Find love. So, love is not just another thing, right? It is, I think, at the center of at least the modern, I'll say the American experience. And I think so much of our issues in life, when people have issues, people have issues. What do they have issues with? Right? Well, yeah, relationships. They didn't get enough love in their childhood, right? Or they got a certain kind of love that was, they feel was injurious to them. So this centrality of love the searching for love, the looking for love, the needing love, the wanting love, again, I think is the central energy of the American experience, as well as it is probably the essential, or one of the essential pains of the human experience. People get hurt in love, they get disappointed in love. So much anger, violence even in our culture between people is some of the worst violence in our culture goes on between people who are supposed to be in love or used to be in love. Right? So I guess what I'm saying is, learning how to love is not just another how-to. It is, I think, central to the human experience, as well as both in terms of happiness. I mean, why do we search for love? Why do we want love? Why do we want a loving partner? Because we think it's the path to what? To happiness, to wholeness, to feeling good, right? And at the same time, the disappointment in love, the losing love, the being frustrated in life, being hurt in love, is on the other side, one of the greatest sufferings that people experience. So it is because of that that we do these retreats, we do these intensives on love. One of the things, the problems with doing a retreat on love, if I do a retreat on this aspect of the Buddhist teaching or that aspect of the Buddhist teaching or Buddhist psychology, because Buddhism is new to our culture, most people don't have a lot of baggage. Most people don't have a lot of references, right? So when you give them Buddhist teachings, it's kind of look new territory, new way of looking at things, right? But when it comes to love, since it has been so central in all of our lives, very personally, interpersonally, we have a lot of baggage. I'm being nice now. We have a lot of baggage, love, which means we have all kinds of ideas about what love is and what love isn't, and what love should be and what it shouldn't be, and how when you're in love and how when you're out of love, right? You see what I'm saying? There's not a lot of purity in it, not a lot of openness, even though we think there is. So again, what I said to the group when we assembled in the beginning, I acknowledged that, and this was, a fairly experienced group of members, and it was very clear that, learning how to love was not, this was not new for people. People had been dealing with this issue for, since adolescence, maybe, and because of the kind of people we are in our community, people are kind of working on themselves. So people have read lots of books on love, and they've listened to lots of podcasts on love, and they've been to retreats on love and workshops on love, and love, right? I mean, been in therapy for love and around love and relationships. So, I mean, and yet, here we are, right? So why is it with all that learning and all that intentionality and all those, desire to change, why are we here once again? And I'll go into that, but one of the things I said to people on the day one, after having them got to acknowledge that they're all experts in love, and yet have not been able to implement it really in their life, is forget it all. Just forget everything you ever knew about love, thought about love. Okay, just be totally open and be blank, right? Because the problem, I think, up to now is, we've built this ability to learn how to love on basically a very faulty. It's sort of like at a certain point when you're trying to repair something, you keep making repairs to something, you keep making changes to something. At a certain point, you realize that all the changes and repair I'm making are all in the context of what the thing is. But maybe the thing itself isn't worth keeping. You see? Sometimes when I'm working on an idea or something, I'll put something out, and then I'll work it, and then I'll work it, and it just doesn't seem right. At a certain point, I go, just throw it away and start over. Right? It's just because we're endlessly tweaking. You see, we're endlessly tweaking something that is fundamentally misguided. Right? You see? We're always trying to improve something that, really can't be improved because the structure that we've built it on, which is faulty learning, faulty experience, right? Most of us did not grow up in a context of life that was totally 100% healthy. Is that true? Right. I mean, we did not grow up with people that 100% were loving with each other, knew how to 100% nurture love with us, were great models of it, exemplars of it, you know what I mean? In that sense, there's a lot of good stuff to build on. But many of us, and again, this is not to blame anybody, because everybody's product of their causes and conditions, poor experiences, poor modeling, inconsistent, all that. I don't need to go into it, right? And so it's that basic, flawed structure of our learning and experience about love, conscious and unconscious, that we're always trying to work with. You see, and it's unworkable. And that's why we're here, because it doesn't get us to where we want to go, right? And so my suggestion to people was, in this matter, why don't we just put it aside, be totally fresh? And then step one, what are the Buddhist teachings on love? Right? Let's just learn, let's just be open and see there may be another whole way to go at this love thing, which is so essential, right? And it's very different. Because the Buddha called, I think, what passes for love in our culture, which is probably more around romantic love, he called that suffering. Why? Because it is based on attachment. It is based on need, right? Neediness. It's based on looking outside ourselves for the solution to a problem that's inside us. Therefore, it'll never work. Can you see that? Because our neediness, our woundedness around love, our feelings of our own unlovability, unworthiness, not feeling whole, those are internal experiences, right? And you can't solve an internal experience out there. You only solve it in here, where the problem is, you see. So it's not like, romantic relationships and these kinds of relationships aren't just part of the human, experience. But it's this believing that somehow if I find the right person, if I find the right relationship, then everything will be wonderful. Anybody know about that one? Right? That is a setup. A setup for what? Disappointment. frustration, anger, hurt, all that stuff that comes up, right? Because that other person will never give us what we want. Because the problem is in here as well as they have their stuff. Right? They have their stuff. That doesn't mean we can't create loving, harmonious relations with people, but it's this inner need. So the Buddhist teaching is not about, how do I get love? It's how do I cultivate and generate love from within? How do I become a loving person, a kind person, a compassionate person, a happy person? You see, how do I learn how to generate these qualities within myself? It's called the Four Immeasurables. How do I learn to generate it in myself? You see, if I can generate it in myself, I have it. I don't need it. I don't need it from the outside. Right? Is that clear? See, I don't need it from the outside. To be needy is to put yourself in a very, vulnerable situation. And that's why people, I don't want to go to that love thing. It makes me feel vulnerable. Right? People talk this way. But what does that really mean? It's that needy love, that clinging love, right? That's what we're afraid, and you have a good right to be afraid. Because you can't depend on other people to be the ideal that you want. Right? That's a setup, if there ever was one. So fundamentally, the Buddhist teachings on love, loving kindness, compassion, joy in the joy of others. And then the fourth part is equanimity, which is, our capacity to love. We have such a narrow purview. We think if I can only find one person, and then maybe we can make a little family together, and we can all be loving together, and maybe I'll extend it to a few close friends, and you see how it's very tiny. The Buddha's love is immeasurable. It's like, how do I cultivate a love and a compassion that is like the sun? It just radiates toward everyone. Right? So this equanimity, equality is very much part of the Buddhist teachings on love. Right? It's something I want to learn to do in all my relationships, in all my connections, with everyone I encounter, with the world, with animals. You know what I mean? It's like, loving kindness toward all beings. Right? Compassion for all beings who suffer. That's everyone, isn't it? And it cuts across all the barriers that we erect between me and you, between my family and your family, between my religion and your religion, and my country and your country, and my ethnic background and your ethnic background. You see, all the ways this kind of love cuts through all that. We're all, part of the Buddhist teachings is everyone is just like me. Just like me. Right? Nobody wants to suffer. Everybody wants to be happy. That's universal. And that cuts through all the ways we divide each other from each other when we see the universality of this fundamental human experience. Right? We want to be happy, at peace. We want to be free of suffering. Right? So we want to understand that the cultivation of these four immeasurables is kind of an ongoing. It's a flow that never has to stop, you see. That's why it's something that we learn to cultivate. And that's what, we spent a lot of time in this retreat. The first day was spent on learning, and then how to actually practices to do it. Another very difficult part of this beside the other things I mentioned, is in Buddhist love, there's no quid pro quo, right? There's no payoff. There's nothing I want. I give my love, I give my compassion freely. But most of us, we live, like it's a transaction, right? I'll give you my love, but you have to do this, this, and this. I'll give you my love, but you have to be like this, this, and this. Right? And so that's in Buddhism, that's not love. That's not real love. That's a wounded love. That's a narrow love. Now, again, we have to begin somewhere. I mean, it's not like, but there's something much greater than that, right? That quid pro quo. That always, watching, right? I'm being very loving to them. The least they could do is what, right? You see, we're always manipulating. That's the world of self. It's always watching out for itself. It doesn't like to do things freely, right? It always wants to get something back. Right? The least they could tell me is, gee, you're really quite a loving person these days. Oh. See, at least they could say that, right? At the very least. Yeah, so, that was a lot of the retreat. And then another whole part of the retreat, of course, was blockages, So why is it, even if we learn these practices, these teachings, why don't they just flow? And again, that's, what are the impediments? What are the things that prevent me from just entering freely into this way of loving and being? What holds me back? And so we spent some time really hearing from people and looking deeply and reflecting. What are the impediments in me? Again, some of them are very unconscious. It's early learning. Family situations, life. Things that happen. We didn't have good models, or we really didn't receive unconditional love. It was always parceled out. Right, or else we've been wounded in love. You know what I mean? All kinds of things that that prevent us from going into the world, as a loving person. Of course, the other thing is what we just talked about is, the world of self. The world of self is only concerned about me, right? And it sees everyone out there as just objects to fulfill my needs. Very dangerous, right? So the self is always scanning. What's in this for me? What can I get from this person? How can I keep this person? How can I control this person? How can I manipulate this person? To give me what I think I want. Very busy. So again, all these things, are contaminations. Once all that is clear, what also gets in our way, and this is sort of a review for people on retreat. The other thing, which is so profound, and so simple, is we don't have a conscious, clear aspiration, commitment to show up in the world as a loving, compassionate person. We maybe have a general aspiration, but on a day-to-day level, on a moment-to-moment level, on a human encounter level that are going on all day, that is not what's in our mind. And so this capacity to implement in our daily life what we say we like, most people would say, yeah, I'd like to be more loving. Yeah, sounds good. I'd like to be more compassionate. Sounds good. I'd like to be more open, less defended, more relaxed around people and caring. And yeah, that sounds great. I'm in for that. And that's it. That's it. And then we just go through our day. And the problem is, as I point out all the time, is the way we have done things has its own energy. It does not need any consciousness. Right? So as long as we're on autopilot, we will continue to do things the way we've always done it. And there's no way around that. If we want to change, change, unfortunately, takes consciousness, takes awareness, takes intention, right? Takes a certain kind of discipline, right? And we know that, if you want to learn any new skill, work, craft, sports, whatever you want to learn, you have to what? If you want to get good at it, you have to practice, and you have to be very intentional, and you have to know that's what I want to do, and you have to devote time to it, and it has to be in your mind, and you have to make choices, to always be working it if you want to get good at it. So if we want to get good at being a loving person, a compassionate person, a happy person, right? Unfortunately, we're going to have to work at it. It'd be nice to say you can just take a pill, but it doesn't work that way. So to get anything deeper than, and that's one of the things we talked about, that a lot of our learning about love, our new learning about love, is intellectual. We've read it from books, we've heard talks, we've been, it's all up here. But our deeper experiential learning about love, which is often, not good learning, it's kind of poor learning, that's deep because it happened early on, you see. And so to offset that kind of conditioned way we have of being in the world, right, especially in this area of relationships, you see, we have to work at it. And so there's got to be conscious intention, there's got to be an implementation plan, I mean, that's kind of where we went into the retreat. Like, when you leave here today, there are going to be 60 people, set forth out in the world. If you're not conscious of what you're doing and how you want to change, you will, within a few days, couple of weeks, you'll be back, responding the way you always did. Because that's the way you know. That's your default. So that's kind of what we've been up to. What I wanted to do, and then I'll take questions, is I've asked 3 people who are here in the hall for retreat if they would share their experience. And I'm doing this because I think for people who weren't on retreat and also for other people on retreat, it's just interesting that we learn from one another. And so I've asked someone who is brand new to our community, brand new to me, and first time on retreat. I've asked somebody who's sort of new to us, but has been here a little while, and then somebody who's been around a while, just to kind of share their experience, around 5 minutes, just what the retreat's been like for them, what was their experience, what they learned, what they got out of it, what were their challenges, just to kind of give us a little, these are sort of like, what are they, on the news, what are they, kind of like human interest stories? What would you call it? So, a sneak peek, oh, okay. I felt like a human interest story, So if they would come up, and then do we have a mic? Okay, so why don't we begin with Todd, since Todd is the newest. And Todd, maybe, and Annie and Libby, maybe just introduce yourself, just a little who you are, what you do, where you live, just briefly. Still doing COVID protocols in the hall if you're wondering what's going on.
Hi, my name is Todd Gore, and I live. Hi, my name is still Todd Gore, and I live in Claremont. And for a few years, I've been what I would call a dabbler at mindfulness with things that I could just pick up on my own. I recently found out about the community here and became very interested, and then recently joined. And I was very anxious to get inundated with it and do something like a retreat. My dabbling had not really gotten me where I had, was hoping to get. And a couple of things initially just about the retreat itself. It's been a great experience all the way around. The Great Cloud facility is wonderful place, very comfortable. All of that really worked very well for me. Just the way the attention to everything, I think, was very well done and enabled me anyway to be able to really focus on what I was here for, which was great. The food was wonderful. I don't know if Brian is here, but I don't eat a vegan life. I occasionally have a vegan meal with my son, and he'll be thrilled that I actually spent several days eating just vegan. But it was great, and a little side note, I may even feel a little better, and so maybe that will incentivize me to go more in that direction. I don't know. I'm not going to commit to that at this point. But I did get a lot out of being here, and so the whole being inundated with it, the silentness of it was interesting. Having never been to a retreat of this kind or any kind of a retreat like this, it was very strange to not talk. I've been to lots of technical and other business adult education weeks, and there's a lot of talking, and it's constant talking. The mix of Dharma talk and meditation, and I think what was for me anyway a very good mix as far as the amount of Dharma talk was balanced well with meditation that gave me the ability to reflect well on what was being said and how that applies to me, how I can apply it so that I can, as Fred was saying, be able to action on that when I go home, because that's why I'm here. It was fun being here, but I'm here so that I can take something home and make changes in myself. So the overall experience has been very positive for me. Let's see, I don't know if I'm out of my time, but great. I didn't know if I had enough time. So to my okay. So I learned quite a bit about myself. That I thought that I had overcome things like acceptance. I said, well, I'm a very accepting person, but when I really looked at it, I'm accepting on a very specific basis, or I have been. I'm accepting if these conditions are true, then I'm very accepting. But when they're not, then sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. I hadn't really realized the extent to which that applied to myself. That not only am I not that accepting as I thought in my relationships with those close to me, I haven't been as accepting of loving myself as I assumed maybe that I was. And so the teachings and the focus enabled me to see that in a much better way and make me, able to take that forward from this point. So there's a whole lot that I got out of this that it will take me quite a while to unpack and go through. Hopefully, in a which I also got from being here, in a little slower, more intentional, more conscious way than I might have 4 years ago or 5 years ago at a technical class. So thank you.
Oh, sure. I'm Annie. I'm from up the road, Lutz, and I signed up for this intensive. This is my first in-person intensive. I've been to several online intensives, and then the first night, Angie read what the whole intensive was, and I'm like, oh, I don't know about the other stuff. But I signed up for this because I wanted to learn how to love people I don't like. And then I come to find out that I'm the problem. So I'm like, oh, we're back to that again. So, and just the information that Fred gave me was just awesome and practical. And I can write it down, I can use it. And the facility, like being online is helpful, but being here with all of you is so beneficial to me. I just can feel it in my brain when we're all meditating. And the one other thing was, I was talking to my friend and I said, I really want to go to an in-person retreat during COVID. And there were no in-person retreats. And we're like, how can you just be silent for so long? And it was so easy to be silent. And it was just so beneficial. So that's it. Thanks.
Good morning. Bow to all of you online as well in the hall. My name is Libby Dunn, and I live in Gainesville, Florida. I'm retired. I used to be a social scientist once upon a time. And I think, I'm trying to add up in my mind, but I think it's getting close to 7 years that I've been a member of FCM. And I probably have been on at least 2 retreats a year, at least. So, a dozen retreats or more. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about what I like about retreat, what's wonderful about retreat. And if you haven't gone, you'll want to. Unlike Annie, I started off with lots of resistance when I first came to retreat. And it used to be every night, every time on like the first night I was there, I'm like, why am I here? I need to go home. That doesn't happen anymore. The first time I went on retreat, I snuck my phone into my room and I texted my family good night. That doesn't happen anymore. And even I had my phone, but I never turned it on the whole time, except to see the time. That's a change. And also silence, being silent around and being with a big group of people. I was uncomfortable, especially just being around people. It's like thinking, but that's not true anymore. I'm very comfortable being around everybody. And in fact, well, I'll get to that in a minute. It helps us a great deal. I did do some retreats online, and all of these things hold for retreats online as well. Fred always starts off by asking us to put up some barriers to the past and the future, which to me is incredibly helpful, not to think about whatever. Because your mind has to be totally on what you're doing, and that's why you come to retreat. The whole schedule is arranged so that, all of these pieces complement each other, and also they build over time. So when you show up, you're showing up with your regular mind. When you leave, your mind has settled. Your mind has settled a great deal. I want to say something specifically about this retreat. It was on the Four Immeasurables, and not the first time I've heard about them. I've read a book or two. I was in an intensive once upon a time, and now I'm back in the intensive, so I can learn about it better. But this retreat really completely, it's very fresh, a very fresh way to look at this. And Fred asked us to do that. He asked us to open up a space for something new in our minds. And then also, encouraged us to try new things and to forget everything we knew and be willing to listen and try these new things. So I took more notes on this retreat than I think I have in other retreats. And it was all practical stuff. What can I do? Do this, do this, do this. And I got a lot of that from the other retreatants, listening to them. We have one time a day when we share what's going on with us. And so hearing the other retreatants tell me what they were going to do, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. One big thing I learned is that it's, as much as I'd like it to, it's not just going to happen. Developing this heart, this true heart of love, because I'm a nice person. I really am. I've been a nice person for a long time. But I'm not that kind of nice. And I'd like to be. I've wanted to be here for several years, but it doesn't just happen. And so, going to retreat and being in that container of retreat gives us a taste of what it can be like. Because during those 3 days, I was surrounded by people who were practicing the same thing I was, thinking the same things I was thinking about. And you feel so much encouragement to go deeper, to go further. And I just want to close with one thing about people on retreat. They heard me already about work meditation. And that's one of the things we do in our schedule. We have work meditation. And I did this with online retreat as well. And I found it to be the same. Whether I'm here or an online retreat, that work is just so different than the way I normally work at home. And so I might just put it in my schedule, This is my work. There's a big difference. Work meditation is fun. I mean, you're just right with the job. You're not really worried about, I've finally gotten over, worrying about what other people might think, how well I'm doing the job or not doing I did in the beginning. I'm like, oh, am I doing this right? But now it's like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do what I can. And when the bell rings, I'm done. And I stay mindful the whole time. Stay mindful. And not only that, but because you're staying mindful and because you're thinking about all this material, it can start to kind of come up. And so my job was to wash breakfast and lunch dishes. And I was washing the oatmeal pot yesterday, and I was so happy. I was like, oh, I love washing this pot. All these people are studying so hard. I hope this oatmeal gave them the energy they needed to at least have some insights, And I felt so happy. And then all of a sudden I thought, well, why don't I feel this happy washing dishes at home? And it's because of not learning how to practice these four immeasurables. I think that was an example of mudita, perhaps. Great joy that others could be nourished and could have insights. And so I guess that's what I learned, Fred.
I'd like to open it up. People in the hall, we have a microphone. People at home can just chat your question in. But as I said, this is, there are many topics where we, in Buddhism we may not have much experience in or opinions about. But love, this is something we all know, right? How many times in your life have you said, I love you to somebody? Or love you? How many times have you heard people say, I love you? We probably can't remember when we were infants, but, we've been using those words, as long as we've been alive. So, really, what is love? What really is love? And is there a love that does not create suffering? See, this is the Buddhist teaching was always about the end of suffering. It's about cultivating ways of being in the world, thinking, acting, etc., that don't create suffering and create the opposite, create wholeness, create goodness. And so his teachings on love spoke directly to that fundamental human experience. And how can we approach love? How can we create loving relationships that are not a source of suffering? Right? That's the key piece. Key challenge for all of us. As somebody wrote me, and I read it at a retreat, falling in love is easy, but creating, maintaining a loving relationships, that takes effort, that takes work. So good. Any questions about anything? Yes. And again, in the hall, and then at home, just chat it in, or if you have something more involved, they can just unmute themselves. No, they can't. Okay, they got to chat it in. What? Yeah, whichever's easier. Okay. Yes.
Nicholas bowing in.
Yes, Nicholas.
So speaking about work meditation, of what we've been doing this retreat, our work meditation here has been physical. It's been washing dishes, things of that nature, which is simpler to practice with to bring that loving nature to. Most, not all, but for me, my experience at least, a lot of my work is cerebral. It is, that's how I make my living for 8-9 hours a day. Do you have any words of, is it simply further practice to bring it to that cerebral type of work? Similar, just more, or is there a different perspective I could take to help bring that loving aspect to my day-to-day career?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. Now, obviously, there's a reason. I mean, within our community and the activities, there's, a lot of people do work, which, creating programs and, all that stuff. But we don't do any of that on retreat, right? So there's a reason, just the point you made, that doing manual work, is much, much easier in terms of maintaining concentration, right? And it's very simple. So the one thing I would say to you before we get into your actual work is, Nicholas, if you are spending a lot of your day doing cerebral work, please learn to enjoy your non-cerebral work. Okay? I mean, so again, what is that? Oh, like cleaning the house, right? See, most of us, we go, oh, one thing I don't like to do is clean the house, right? You see? Cleaning the house is manual labor, right? It's good non-conceptual work, right? Do you prepare food at all? Yeah, so, very mindful, just like in the kitchen downstairs, very mindful, very present. Enjoy the preparation, enjoy the eating of the food, enjoy the washing up. Again, takes no thought, does it, any of those things? And there are other activities that you're involved in during the day beside work, going for walks, listening to music, you know what I mean? There are non-cerebral things that, it's very important because, again, you're not alone, especially I think if you're a generation where more and more people are doing these kind of works, is what do they do when their 8 or 10 hours of cerebral work is over? They what?
distract themselves or keep thinking about.
Yeah, or else get onto this and get onto that and start listening to this and start surfing. You know what I'm saying? So basically what you're doing is just keeping that stimulation going. You're right. Rather than going, oh, enough of that. Right? You see? So we have to be very conscious in how we use our downtime, because if you're stimulated in your work, and then at night you're, doing this and texting and whatever, you know what I'm saying, and watch it, you know what I mean, and you're keeping the stimulation going, then you wonder why it feels like, there's no end to it. You see, stimulation all day. A lot of people have trouble falling asleep, because the mind is so stimulated. You wake up in the morning, and right away you're what? Thinking about your work, what you got to do. You see, so that's very destructive overall. So it's very important that we put barriers, especially these days. Okay. So what exactly do you do? I mean, I'm sure I won't understand it, but I mean, in one sentence, you do what?
I audit IT systems.
Okay, and why do you, so is there any benefit from doing that to anybody?
Making the companies safer, their information.
Okay, so you see what I'm getting at? So you're saying what I do is beneficial. It's keeping the company safe. It's keeping the people who work there employed, okay? So you can have an altruistic aspiration for the work you do. If you have in your mind, I'm not doing this just to get a paycheck, it's not like you're not, you know what I mean? But that's not what, and I'm not doing this just for, applause and all that. I'm doing this because I want to be of benefit. And so to have that inspiration, you can have it even in your cerebral work. Now, in terms of work, the fundamental Zen thing is one thing at a time. Okay? One thing at a time. Okay? You do this, when that's done, you do that. When that's done, you do that. When that's done, you do that. Or just simply, just this. Okay? Now, oftentimes we don't work that way. We're doing this, but we're thinking about that, and we're worried about that, and we're concerned about, you see what I'm saying? And so can you see how you're piling it up on yourself? So we have to kind of separate, which is very important, the actual doing from all the mental stuff that I put on it. Okay? Because I would imagine what you're doing takes a lot of attention, right? And it's just this. You're very focused, right? Whatever the problem is, whatever the auditing you're doing, right? You're very focused on it. And if you enter your work in with that kind of presence and attention, have you ever heard me talk about concentration? That sounds familiar to you?
Yes, it does.
All right. That's what we're talking about, right? Your work, make your work into your meditation, which means you're very singularly concentrated on each thing you're doing, right? Just like in meditation. When we're meditating, we're just meditating on our meditative practice. We're not thinking about this and remembering about that. And okay, so when you start approaching your work that way, and you don't pile it up, you don't get distracted. And then again, people add all these other pieces, stress, they get anxious, they get worried, deadlines, am I going to meet it, what people think of me, you know what I mean? So a lot of times when people say, oh, my work is very difficult, it's really not the work. It's all the extra stuff that we pile onto the work, the emotional stuff, the expectations. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you can begin to parse that out to really see, like if I, just you watch, what actually am I doing all day? And where is my mind when I'm doing all that? And you might find out that whatever stress or agitation you're feeling is not coming from the work. Because the work is just what? First this, then this, then this. Try this. That doesn't work, try that. Isn't that what you're doing?
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of simple, isn't it, when you put it that way? Keep it simple. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions about? Yes, Angie?
We have two questions online.
Mm-hmm.
The first I'll read, and the second we will invite her to.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing love to your day-to-day encounters
Mm-hmm.
feels like it just reaches a small amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
How can it really make a difference in the world?
Yeah, so the question is, wasn't there a song, We Are the World? We are the world. I mean, each one of us are part of the world, right? When you bring loving kindness, compassion to one human being, you're bringing loving compassion into the world, right? That's all we need to know, right? You see, we want outcome, you see? Yeah, I'd like to give my love, but I really want to give it to everyone. You can't give it to everyone. Can you? No. I mean, there's 8 billion people in the world. But if you give love and compassion and presence and understanding to everybody you meet, everybody you encounter, I mean, not just, the people you live with or your family, everybody you encounter when you go into a store and everybody you encounter in the street, you meet them with presence and caring, and you let them know you see them and you care about them. How are you? When you say that, you really mean it. You want to know how they are, right? You have time to connect with people. That can make a difference. So you do that, let's say you go through your day, you do that with 10 people. Well, maybe that's affected them, you see, and maybe they're interacting with some people. And it's a ripple, right? No, that may be, we're all different. Some of us have small universes that we interact in, right? Some people have much larger, interactions, much larger networks, where they can affect that kind of, But love is very personal. Love is connection, so we have to kind of, many of us, we want to give love to the whole world, but we have trouble giving love to the people we live with. We have trouble giving love to the people we disagree with. We have trouble giving love and understanding and compassion to the people we don't like, you see. There's the challenge in learning how to love. So, yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh, right? Peace begins with me. I mean, that was his great revolutionary statement, right? Yeah, you want to bring peace to the world, wonderful. First step, become a peaceful person, right? You want a world of where everybody loves one another. Well, learn how to love everybody in your life, right? You see, I mean, it's like, we have all these great ideas, but we want to bring it into life, right? You want a world where people treat each other kindly and with respect, non-judgmental. Do that with everybody you encounter, right? If you have the ability, because of your position in life, to affect more people, well, do your best to do that. But, if we overreach, then we get frustrated. Well, if I can't give love to the whole world and change the whole world, then what's the use? You see, that's a very defeatist kind of thinking. The world is, why is the world the mess it's in? I mean, the Buddha taught, 2,600 years ago. I mean, didn't Jesus say anything about love? Right? I mean, didn't all the great teachers talk about love and how we should treat each other? Right? How come we don't? Well, because we don't practice. So this is the great missing piece, you see? And that's, I think, one of the great teachings about Thich Nhat Hanh, if this is the world we want, become that person. Cultivate it within yourself. Take the take the anger out of your own heart first. Learn how to love, love thine enemies as thyself. I mean, there it is. But do it. How do you do it? You got to practice. It's not easy, right? And if more people practice, then the world begins to change. The world does not change by ideology, right? I mean, the world, we've had romances with ideology and beliefs and ideals, forever. And yet people still, so many people treat each other miserably. Why is that? Because ideas are up here. Beliefs are up here. There has to be a transformation that goes on deeper. And the other question?
Carol, we invite you to bow in.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I think several others were deeply moved by Fred's discussion during the retreat on what I would call deep, 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 deep listening.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're quite familiar with deep listening, deep sharing as a technique, but Fred took it to a new level. And I would appreciate hearing more about that, or hearing about that again, in fact. Thank you.
Yeah, so let me just say first thing, I mean, what you said, and this is the whole thing about all this love stuff, all these books and all these workshops and, and all these podcasts, they're all full of what? Techniques, right? And we're a technical fix society, right? Just give me a new technique, right? And so that's why I said, we fill up our heads with all these techniques. Now, what technique should I be using now? And you know what I mean? It's like transformation has to go deeper than technique, right? It has to be a transformation of our minds. Is that clear? And so, so what Carol's talking about is, that in our tradition, meaning the tradition that comes from Thich Nhat Hanh, he says love is understanding. First time I heard that, I was blown away. Like, what? I thought love is a warm, fuzzy feeling, Isn't that love? Love is understanding. When you understand someone, you accept them for who they are. And when you accept another human being for who they are and give and generate that to them, they know they're loved. Love is not a thing, right? Love is something that's lived. So how do you understand another human being? I mean, you can guess all kinds of things about what's going on with them, right? You can project all kinds of things that are going on with them. But if you really want to understand who they are, you have to be willing to get to know them. How do you get to know a human being? You listen to them. But what does that mean then in terms of a deeper thing? It means we want to know, many of us don't even really know the people we live with. Do we because we don't really understand them. To understand a human being is to understand all their causes and conditions, right? This is why you can love your enemy. Because when you take a word enemy away and you just see that as a human being, and you understand that that human being is only the product of their causes and conditions, and if I went through the same causes and conditions, I'd be just like them. See, that's understanding. Right? So to listen deeply to another human being is to listen under the surface, to listen to them reveal who they are, so we don't talk them out of their stuff. We don't interpret. We don't judge. We don't do all the things we do when somebody is talking. We even don't interrupt. We listen deeply. Because whatever they're saying, even if we disagree with it, even if that's not the way we see things or view things, or we have a totally different way of looking at the situation or whatever, they're telling us who they are in that moment. And so the deeper we listen to what's underneath, with an interest and a curiosity, and a desire to keep unpacking it. Like, tell me more. I want to know you. Right? And what happened before then? And what was that like for you? And what is it like for you right now? You see? What's going on with you right now? What are you feeling right now? That's deeper than the surface. But to practice deep listening, you have to be totally open. You have to have no agenda. You have to be totally accepting and create an environment where the person can say whatever they want. And not make it about yourself. Because as soon as they're saying something that you don't want them to be saying, or they didn't say, we're now imposing ourself. We're making it about me. To listen deeply means no agenda, total open. It's like you're just giving somebody the floor, and I'm just here to learn about you. And that interaction is always fresh. Because all of us are endlessly in process, and who we are today may not be who we are last week, and what's coming up now is not coming up what was coming up a month ago. And so, so listening deeply, Thich Nhat Hanh says, that's the way we love. That's the way we can love our enemies. When we see, they're just a product of their causes and conditions. If I can get into them, if I can see what has created their life, their fears, their angers, their suffering, why they see things the way they do, why they're needy for this, why they're needy. Yeah, I want to understand you. I don't want to talk you out of it. I don't want to judge you. Right? And wouldn't it be wonderful if the other person had the same interest in us? That we had a relationship with other human beings. I mean, it doesn't have to be our intimate partner. It could be family and friends and children, where we learn, I want to know you for who you are. Deep listening, wonderful practice that we do. And it's a skill, something we learn, we become better at over time. So good. So this brings our Sunday Sangha talk to an end. It also is the final talk for the retreat. We spent time early this morning talking with retreatants about future practice, going back into their daily life. It's all about implementation, very conscious. So good. Thank you, everyone.